I faced my husband's new girlfriend and the truth shocked us both. Amy stood just outside the modest house, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the cracked sidewalk. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat heavy with a mix of dread and hope. The neighborhood was familiar, the worn garden gate, the peeling white paint on the porch railing, the faded welcome mat that seemed to mock her hesitation. Amy adjusted the thin scarf wrapped around her neck, though the chill settled deeper than the autumn breeze. She looked up at the door, her knuckles white as she pressed the doorbell, waiting for an answer she wasn't sure she wanted. For months now, Amy had forced herself to stay silent, swallowing every ache and confused thought that emerged when she caught even a glimpse of David's name on her phone or heard whispered rumors from neighbors. As a young schoolteacher with a gentle spirit, she had always believed that love was steady and forgiving, that hardships could be spoken through, not hidden behind walls of secrecy. But David's sudden change, the late nights away, messages that vanished too quickly, the cold distance in his gaze, had built an invisible barrier between them. When she learned about the new woman, a younger, glamorous woman named Emily, her world trembled like a fragile house in a storm. The door swung open before Amy could retreat, revealing a woman who both stunned and unsettled her. Emily's smile was effortless, polished, and rehearsed, as if she were playing a part Amy hadn't yet been cast out from. She was striking, with chestnut hair cascading down her shoulders and eyes that shimmered like quiet lakes. But as Amy stepped inside, the warmth she had hoped for was replaced by an icy clarity. She was an outsider, both in David's house and his life. Amy's lips quivered, looking down at her worn coat sleeves, suddenly feeling the weight of every whispered word she'd heard from her colleagues and neighbors. "I didn't know you'd be here," Emily said, her tone measured but laced with something unreadable. The room felt stifling, the sound of laughter from a back room echoing faintly, a cruel reminder of the spaces Amy no longer belonged to. This was more than just a home, it was the stage of her unraveling. She realized then how little David had prepared her for this new chapter, how easily she had been cast aside without a word. The betrayal didn't just sting, it burned, settling deep into her bones like a winter frost refusing to thaw. Her gaze flickered towards the family photos hung on the wall, memories frozen in happier times, and Amy felt the sharp recoil of loneliness clutching her throat. A question hovered in the air, thick and unspoken. How had she become so invisible to the man she chose to build a life with? Amy swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill but refusing to fall. She took a hesitant step forward, determined to find a voice amidst the pounding silence. If she was to have any chance at healing or closure, it had to start here, confronting the truth she'd fought to deny. But beneath the surface, a storm of doubt churned relentlessly, threatening to drown her resolve. Have you ever found yourself standing on the edge of a moment that could change everything? Amy wondered. Where do you find the courage to face a heartbreak that feels like an earthquake shaking your very foundation? As Amy breathed in the stale air, the door behind her closed softly, isolating her within the quiet tension of this unfamiliar space. It was the beginning of a journey she hadn't expected, a path lined with pain, humiliation, and the fragile hope of redemption. Inside the dimly lit living room, the air seemed heavy with unspoken words, and Amy's heart felt like it was caught in a vice. Her eyes darted nervously between Emily's carefully composed face and the framed photographs that lined the mantel, snapshots of David's life that now felt like distant memories slipping through her fingers. The gentle hum of a soft jazz record filled the background, as if mocking the tension pulsating between the three of them. Amy's hands trembled slightly, the scarf around her neck suddenly prickling against the warmth of her skin as a cold wave of humiliation washed over her. Emily's gaze was steady but guarded, her smile faltering for just a fraction of a second when she realized the storm of emotions raging beneath Amy's quiet facade. "You didn't call," Emily said softly, her voice almost hesitant, betraying a flicker of guilt she tried hard to suppress. "I thought, maybe you wanted some space." Amy's eyes narrowed, searching for an ounce of sincerity within the smooth exterior of the woman who had so effortlessly claimed a place in her husband's life. "Space?" Amy's voice cracked under the weight of years of silence. "David didn't say a word to me. I was left in the dark, like I was nothing. You have everything, his time, his attention, his life, while I'm battling the shadows alone. David entered the room at that moment, his expression unreadable as he caught sight of Amy. His eyes flickered with a mixture of surprise and discomfort, and the air thickened with tension. The years that had once bonded them seemed to crumble in an instant, exposing raw nerves and unspoken truths. For a moment, Amy wished she could vanish into the muted wallpaper, disappear beneath the guilt and shame clawing at her chest. I'm sorry it's come to this, David said quietly, running a hand through his disheveled hair. But Amy, this isn't how I wanted you to find out, or like this. His apology hung between them, fragile and insufficient. Amy's voice trembled as she whispered, "You promised us a future, David. How did it end up like this, with me standing here as a stranger?" Emily's eyes softened momentarily, and she took a hesitant step forward. "I never meant to hurt you," she confessed, voice barely above a sigh. "There's so much you don't know, about me, about him. It's complicated, and it's not just about us." The silence stretched thin, each of them caught in a web of regret and anger. Amy's cheeks burned as she realized how deeply she'd been underestimated, how easily others had judged her for her seeming passivity. The neighbors whispered, colleagues cast side glances, and even friends assumed she was weak, unable to hold on to what was hers. Her humiliation was not just the loss of David, it was the erasure of her worth in the eyes of everyone around her. Tears pricked at the corner of Amy's eyes, unbidden and protesting the strength she tried to summon. Yet beneath the trembling exterior, a fire was beginning to kindle, an urge to uncover the truth beneath the surface, no matter how painful it might be. "Why didn't you tell me?" Amy demanded, voice shaking but sharp. "Why hide everything, as if I deserved only lies?" David swallowed hard but did not answer immediately. The weight of his silence was deafening. Emily's hands fidgeted nervously, betraying her composed appearance. The tension escalated until finally, Emily spoke, her voice thick with vulnerability, "Because it wasn't just about us. There's a past between us, a history neither of you saw coming, and trust me, it's far from simple." Amy's mind reeled, battling disbelief and the sting of betrayal. Was there some secret more devastating than the affair itself? The room felt like a cage, every breath tight and suffocating. She blinked rapidly, fighting the tears that threatened to fall as the harsh reality settled over her like a shroud. In that moment, the invisible walls built around her heart began to crack, splintering the fragile image she had held onto for so long. As the afternoon light faded and the room grew colder, Amy realized the heartache was far from over, it was only just beginning. Yet beneath the despair, a whisper of resolve stirred quietly, daring her to face whatever demons lay ahead. Have you ever been pushed so far that the pain feels unbearable, yet that same pain becomes the catalyst for the strongest version of yourself? As silence cloaked the room once more, Amy braced herself for the storm to come, longing for answers but afraid of what they might reveal. After that fraught conversation, Amy left the house that evening feeling as though she'd been stripped bare in front of a judgmental world. The streetlights cast long shadows over her path as tears stung her eyes, the bitterness of humiliation settling deeper than any wound she'd known. Each step echoed the questions swirling through her mind like a relentless storm. How had she missed the signs? How did David's heart drift away without so much as a whisper to her? And who was this Emily, tangled so intricately in the fabric of their lives? Days blurred together in a haze of sleepless nights and moments punctuated by the sting of memories. Amy's reflection in the cracked mirror of her tiny apartment seemed like a stranger, a fragile woman mired in self-doubt, draped in the heavy cloak of betrayal. The weight of every whispered rumor and every sidelong glance at the school where she taught her students gnawed at her confidence. The lunchroom was colder now, the once warm greetings thinned into polite nods and awkward silences. She felt every glance as a silent accusation, every question mark of pity or judgment hanging just beneath polite words. Her world had shrunk to dim corners, her comforting books piled untouched, meals eaten hurriedly in solitude, and the laugh of children on the playground echoing a bittersweet reminder of the innocence she wanted to reclaim. Each bite of food was tasteless, each time her phone vibrated, a surge of hope coiled in her chest, only to be crushed when it wasn't David. She wrestled with waves of conflicting emotions, rage, grief, and a gnawing loneliness that wrapped tightly around her heart. Yet, amid this darkness, all wasn't lost. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Amy stumbled upon a message from Claire, a colleague from the school who always seemed to notice when Amy's smile faltered. "If you ever need to talk, I'm here," it read simply, yet it was a lifeline thrown across the chasm of Amy's despair. That small gesture sparked a flicker of hope, prompting Amy to reply hesitantly. The conversation that followed was gentle but steady. Claire listened without judgment, sharing her own story of heartbreak and resilience. For the first time in months, Amy found a safe space where her pain could breathe and her fears could be voiced without fear of scorn. The isolation began to crack, replaced by a nascent sense of companionship. Still, doubts clawed at her relentlessly. She replayed conversations in her mind, dissecting every word, analyzing every glance shared between David and Emily. Was love something that could just vanish? Or was there a deeper reason, a secret hidden beneath the surface that she'd yet to uncover? Her nights were haunted by dreams where David's gaze shifted away from her, where laughter echoed in empty halls, and where Amy's own voice was swallowed by silence. At school, during a quiet moment in the empty classroom, Amy sat alone, her fingers tracing the edges of a forgotten photograph of happier days. A rush of anger surged to the surface, hot and smoky. "Why didn't you fight for us?" she whispered to the empty room. But even as the words left her lips, a countering thought arose, soft but persistent. Maybe she had fought. Maybe love was not a battle to be won, but a garden to be tended, and perhaps some things needed more than love to survive. A phone call one evening brought another twist. David's voice, heavy with regret, asked if she would meet him one last time. Her heart leapt and then sank, torn between the yearning for closure and the fear of further pain. Amy had to decide whether to open the door again or to guard her fragile heart. As she stood by the window that night, watching the stars blur through the rain, Amy pondered the path ahead. She knew the journey to healing would be long and uncertain. But nestled within her, a quiet ember of strength began to glow, a promise to herself that she would rise, no matter how deep the fall. Have you ever felt the crushing weight of loneliness, only to discover that reaching out can light the darkest corners? Amy's world hadn't yet shifted completely, but a single truth was beginning to root itself within her. She was not alone, and perhaps this pain was not the end, but the beginning of something new. The night Amy had dreaded arrived with a quiet storm. The rain tapped softly against her apartment window, blending with the pounding rhythm in her chest as she prepared to meet David one last time. The tiny cafe where they agreed to meet was modest, tucked away on a nearly deserted street, its worn wooden tables illuminated by flickering candlelight. Amy's hands trembled as she clutched her purse, eyes flickering around the room searching desperately for a sign, the past or the future, and bracing herself for whatever truths would unravel. David arrived, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil in his eyes. His face was drawn and pale, shadows beneath his gaze telling stories of nights spent wrestling with guilt and regret. "Amy," he began, voice thick with emotion, "I never wanted to hurt you. All of this, got so complicated." His dedication to honesty was palpable, yet the shame tethered every word. Amy swallowed the lump rising in her throat and struggled to steady her breathing. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me stand in shadows for so long?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper but cutting through the room. David's gaze dropped to the floor. Then, as if a dam breaking, he poured forth a confession that shattered the fragile walls of Amy's heart. "Emily," he hesitated unsteadily before continuing. "She's not just," he paused, swallowing hard. "She's been there for me during my darkest days, more than just a fling. There's pain we both carry, a history I never told you." Amy's knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of the table, every nerve alert. She had never expected this. The betrayal had seemed so clear-cut, but now the complexity twisted inside her chest like a cold, sharp thorn. David told her about Emily's past, years marked by hardship, loss, and a loneliness that mirrored his own. They'd bonded over shared wounds, a connection deeper than superficial attraction or fleeting passion. Amy listened, confusion and disbelief mingling with a flicker of understanding. The image of the beautiful new woman transformed. Emily was not just a rival but a survivor, real and raw beneath polished surfaces. Then the most astonishing moment unfolded. Just as Amy's defenses began to crumble under the weight of truth, Emily herself appeared, standing quietly at the entrance of the cafe. Her eyes met Amy's, and instead of rivalry or hostility, there was an openness that caught her completely off guard. Emily's voice trembled as she spoke. "I never wanted to hurt you, Amy. I've carried my own scars, and I didn't know how to show you the parts of my story that matter." The surprise was overwhelming. A wall of bitterness and competition that Amy had unknowingly built began to dissolve. There was something painfully honest in Emily's vulnerability, a sincerity that resonated in the spaces between hurt and forgiveness. Amy's own tears flowed freely, her shoulders shaking as she allowed herself to be vulnerable for the first time in months. The humiliation she had carried, of being the abandoned wife, the forgotten woman, shifted into a strange, unfamiliar space where empathy and humanity could finally settle. The cafe had become a crucible of raw truth and unexpected kindness, reshaping a narrative Amy thought was scripted in pain and betrayal. The women, once pitted as adversaries, found an unspoken understanding. Beneath the harsh glare of loss, a fragile hope flickered. As they stepped out into the rain, the night no longer felt so cold. There was a softness in Amy's gaze as she looked back at the cafe's dim glow, sensing that this confrontation, painful and honest, was the beginning of something different. Have you ever felt the walls around you crumble only to reveal a strength you never knew existed beneath? In that moment, Amy realized that the journey ahead, though uncertain, held space for healing, for truth, and perhaps even forgiveness. The path she walked wasn't defined by humiliation but by the courage to face her pain and the surprising gift of unexpected compassion. The evening sky began to clear, and with it, the weight on Amy's soul shifted, offering her a glimpse of light at the edge of an uncharted horizon, a light she was ready to pursue. The days following that unexpected encounter at the cafe unfolded like a fragile dance between hope and uncertainty. Amy found herself standing at a crossroads, her heart a complex tapestry of pain, strength, and the lingering shadows of betrayal. Yet, beneath the surface turmoil, a newfound resilience was weaving itself into her being, quiet but unyielding. She knew that if she was to reclaim her sense of self, she would have to face David and the tangled emotions head-on, not with bitterness, but with clarity. The moments before their meeting at Amy's apartment were thick with tension. The modest room, once a sanctuary of shared dreams, now held a charged silence that neither dared to break. Amy's hands rested calmly on the edge of the kitchen table, but inside, her senses were sharp, attuned to every breath and shifting glance. David entered slowly, his eyes weary but pleading, as if searching for forgiveness he wasn't sure he deserved. "I've been a coward, Amy," he admitted quietly, voice cracking with remorse. "I shut you out while dragging both of us through pain. But I want to be honest now. No secrets." Amy nodded, the sting of lingering hurt tempered by the dignity she reclaimed with every measured breath. "I don't want to be your enemy," she said, voice steady but gentle. "I want to understand, to heal. But that means truth, about everything." David met her gaze, a spark of hope flickering despite the weight of their shared past. He spoke of the fears that had gnawed at him, the battles with his own insecurities, the unexpected depth of his connection with Emily, and the years of silence that shattered what he once cherished with Amy. But there was no excuse, only a vow to face the consequences and make things right. In the weeks that followed, Amy and David navigated a painstaking reckoning. There were tears and tense conversations, moments when the past threatened to engulf any progress they made. Yet, Amy's courage to confront the pain, paired with David's willingness to be vulnerable, redefined the narrative between them. They agreed to part ways, not with bitterness or rancor, but with respect for what their shared history had meant and a commitment to move forward without pretenses or deceit. Yet the true transformation was within Amy. The humiliation she had once carried like a shackle was slowly replaced by a quiet confidence, a deep-seated understanding that her worth was not tied to David's actions. She embraced her vulnerabilities as strengths, recognizing that standing tall amid broken dreams was the ultimate testament to her character. Friends rallied around her, inspired by her journey from despair to empowerment, reminding her at every turn that she was not alone. As time went on, Amy also reached out to Emily, choosing compassion over resentment. They met cautiously, each woman revealing their stories, the wounds, the hopes, the imperfections that made them human. That fragile bridge between two women, once torn by pain, was rebuilt on mutual respect and an unexpected friendship born from shared trials. One afternoon, when Amy stood before her classroom filled with eager eyes, she realized that the pain which threatened to consume her had become a source of strength. Her story, her resilience, was a beacon not just for herself, but for every child who faced hardship with trembling courage. Have you ever found that your darkest moments can become the foundation for your brightest future? Amy's journey was far from over, but in conquering the shadows of humiliation and heartache, she found a power that transformed her from victim to victor. The echoes of past wounds no longer dictated her story. Instead, she was scripting a new chapter, one of healing, growth, and unwavering self-worth. And in that, her true victory had been won. Months later, Amy sat by the window of her small apartment, the soft light of a spring afternoon casting a warm glow over her face. The hum of the city outside blended with the quiet rustling of pages as she leafed through a well-worn journal, her thoughts meandering through the chapters of a year that had reshaped her life. She traced the inked words that once told a tale of heartbreak and humiliation, now transformed into a testament of courage and renewal. The woman staring back at her in the reflection was different, yet the same, a quietly powerful soul who had weathered the storms of love and loss and emerged whole. Her journey had been carved through pain, but also through unexpected kindness, difficult truths, and moments of deep introspection. She thought of David, whose absence no longer echoed in bitterness but in acceptance, and of Emily, whose presence had shifted from rival to unlikely friend, their shared vulnerability forging a connection neither had foreseen. Amy's heart held no trace of resentment, instead, it blossomed with empathy and gratitude for the hard lessons learned. Walking past the school where she taught, Amy felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her students' eager faces and boundless curiosity kindled in her a bright fire of hope not only for them but for herself. The sting of past judgment had dulled, replaced by a growing confidence that radiated from within. She was more than the sum of the betrayals she'd endured. She was a woman who had reclaimed her story on her own terms. One afternoon, as the golden light warmed the classroom, Amy welcomed a newcomer, a student grappling with loneliness and whispered doubts, much like those she had once borne. Sitting beside the girl, Amy shared fragments of her own journey, not to impart pity, but to illuminate resilience and the power of compassion. The shy smile that blossomed on the student's face was a quiet victory, a reminder that healing was a ripple reaching far beyond oneself. Amy closed the journal gently, her fingers lingering on the cover. She understood now that humiliation, while deeply painful, could be a catalyst for profound transformation when met with integrity and grace. The lessons she carried were universal, that honesty, even when cloaked in vulnerability, sparks genuine connection, that empathy dissolves walls built from fear, and that true strength grows from embracing one's fullest, most imperfect self. Have you ever witnessed your own pain bloom into purpose, creating a light strong enough to guide others through their darkest hours? Her story was no longer defined by betrayal or loss, but by the redemption born from courage and love for herself, first and foremost. Amy's faith in the human spirit had been tested and found unbreakable. And now, standing in the soft glow of a new beginning, she felt ready to face whatever came next with an open heart and unshakable resolve. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. See you in our next story.